Fort Oglethorpe. Georgia, July 1945. The noonday sun presses down like a hot, invisible hand. Air ripples above the hardpan road. Pine shadows shimmer across the fence line in jagged intervals. Engines growl, then fade into choking coughs as a convoy of olive-drab buses grinds to a halt at the camp gate. Dust lifts, hangs, and settles again in slow motion. A moment later, all at once, the doors creak open. Women's boots, polished to regulation, touch Georgia soil. A murmur moves through the waiting guards. They had been told to prepare for a group of female POWs from the European theater. Few of them believed such people even existed. German women soldiers, dressed and drilled like men. Now, stepping down from the buses, the sight itself seems unreal. 50 women in uniform gray skirts and field coats, their insignia carefully removed, step into the white blaze of heat. Some blink behind broken spectacles. Some tighten scarves around their hair. A few manage smiles half-formed between defiance and fatigue. The guards, heavy with rifles and web belts, shift awkwardly. In their minds, perhaps never voiced aloud, lurks the same question. What are we supposed to do with them? The first encounter happens without ceremony. A tall woman, sunburnt arms bare and eyes an impossible blue, pauses on the step, looking over the nearest Americans standing stiff at attention. She whispers something toward her comrades in quick northern dialect. The line erupts in soft, startled laughter. The sergeant frowns, half annoyed, half curious. Later, as the interpreter records statements, the phrase will be explained. "They're a lot bigger than we expected." What seems a joke hides the electric spark of recognition. The POWs had imagined guards like those in propaganda drawings, cruel-faced, brutish, mechanical. Instead, they find young men clean-shaven, tanned from farm work, broad not from discipline alone, but from steady nutrition. In that moment of measured laughter, the defeated glimpse something astonishing, the physical testament of plenty, of a country that has fought a war yet never gone hungry. The Americans, on their side, are equally undone. They had prepared for fanatic women, grim and hardened. Instead, they see elegance amid exhaustion hair pinned neatly, posture still military and precision, even beauty that feels out of place in this theater of surrender. Each side's imagination collapses under the weight of sunlight. Dust drifts between them. Insects hum through it. For a second, the sound of war seems very far away. The guards lower rifles slightly. One prisoner glances around, puzzled. "Hier ist so ruhig," she murmurs. "It's so quiet here." Line by line, the women move forward to the registration tables. Handbags open, documents exchange, tags clipped. The scent of pine resin mixed with diesel and perfume lingers. The laughter of a few minutes earlier has changed shape. Now it threads through the scene as nervous music, part disbelief, part a dawning realization of safety. When the final signature is inked and the paper blotters dry, the officer in charge orders them toward the barracks compound. Marching now, not forced, but orderly. By instinct, they pass the American guards who can't help watching. Beneath the harsh brightness of Overton Street lamps strung along the fences, the scene closes not with threat, but with bewildered politeness. A nod, a hand raised in half salute, the small acknowledgement that history has twisted in unexpected ways. The buses turn empty toward the gate. Heat fades from metal. Within the still afternoon, Fort Oglethorpe holds its breath, aware it has become the stage for a different story than anyone intended. Here, war's machinery will slow. Irony will take root where fear once grew. Beyond this moment of arrival lies the quiet world that will define them, the camp life of routines, manners, laughter, and the strange domestic rhythm that begins when war runs out of purpose, but humanity refuses to end. Morning arrives at Fort Oglethorpe with precision, light spilling across the barracks in pale waves. The compound sits at the edge of Pine Hills, where the grass burns dry by July, the air rich with resin and faraway thunder. Roosters from nearby farms cut through the dawn silence before the bugle can sound. When the notes finally echo, their brass tremor carries across a landscape that feels both victorious and vaguely ashamed of its abundance. The camp was built for nurses and clerks, extended hastily for the arrival of prisoners. Each structure bears the simplicity of army logic. Wooden floors scrubbed with lye, whitewashed walls that smell faintly of chalk and soap. The women are housed in neat rows, 4 to a room, cots aligned as though symmetry might redeem chaos. They have become both guests and curiosities. Life unfolds within boundaries, but not oppression. At 6 o'clock, the roll call. At 7, a breakfast that astonishes them. Fluffy scrambled eggs, real coffee, stacks of soft bread. Several of the women whisper to one another, trying to reconcile such richness with the war that ended only months before. For guards born on Georgia farms, these meals are ordinary. For former Luftwaffe secretaries who survived on barley and dried turnips, it tastes like another universe. The guards try to be formal, but manners creep through discipline. Hats are tipped, salutes turn into nods. They say, "Ma'am," though military rule never required it. The women answer with practiced irony, tiny bows, flashes of humor carried on accents that bend English into melody. When one guard reminds them not to gather near the fence, a dark-haired prisoner replies, "We only watch the American sky," and her companions laugh. The sound unsettles him, not mockery, but lightness reborn in a place designed for punishment. Outside, Georgia goes on. Civilians drive past simply to stare. Newspapers print photographs of Hitler's women, with captions that never quite match reality. Children collect stories from bus drivers, how the prisoners look like movie actresses, how they iron their own blouses, how they sing in perfect harmony on Sunday afternoons. The novelty disarms resentment. The townspeople, many of them with sons still returning from Europe, want to believe that laughter on the other side of the wire means war is truly over. Inside the wire, a rhythm forms. They sweep, polish, tend a garden carved from the red earth. They embroider pillowcases, trade recipes, compare the slang of 2 languages. One learns to say "y'all" and sprinkles it through German sentences, playing to the laughter of both guards and fellow detainees. Another writes daily in her diary. They are colossal, yes, but gentle. It is strange to feel smaller and safer at the same time. By late afternoon, cicadas overlay everything with electric stillness. The day slows into a heat-blurred peace. Guards on watch sit in folding chairs, canteens balanced on their knees. Prisoners wash clothes in metal basins, chatter drifting in dual languages that now share a rhythm. From a distance, the compound could pass for a summer camp, though everyone inside knows what memory lies behind it. The bombed cities, the winter hunger, the authority they once bowed to blindly. Some evenings, a harmonica replaces the bugle. Notes tumble over the wire, and the women hum in response from their porches, shaping improvised harmony. Ordinary sound turns into diplomacy. Language dissolves, emotion remains. The guards begin to nickname them Fräuleins, a word that softens in the southern drawl. The women answer by calling their overseers reason giants. Soon it becomes a friendly ritual. Each morning at roll call, some mischievous voice calls out, "Good morning, giants," and even the officers hide smiles. What began as surprise has settled into rapport. Within laughter hides negotiation, a mutual repair of dignity neither side expected to need. Evening ends with light falling low over pine trunks, shadows stretching until wire and pathway blur together. The camp, viewed from the hillside, glows with orderly calm, an island of captured enemies and uncertain peace existing quietly beneath the giant stars. But in coexistence lies a deeper contradiction waiting to surface, moments where kindness tilts into affection, where curiosity challenges command. Fort Oglethorpe, still smelling of pine and soap, will become the setting for small tests of conscience. Gestures misread, laughter misunderstood, the fragile boundary between duty and empathy. From that world of wary comfort, we move inward to the tensions and revelations that arise when the uniform no longer explains the person, and when humor itself becomes the first step toward forgiveness. Winter presses gently over northern Georgia. The pines darken, the red soil stiffens beneath frost, and the wind hums through the wire fence like a low cello note. Inside the women's compound, smoke drifts from tin chimneys. Within the wooden barracks, laughter still survives the cold. By December 1945, the novelty has matured into familiarity. The Germans and Americans no longer need interpreters. They have invented a shared dialect of gestures and half-translated humor. The Fraulein camp has become almost domestic, a paradox that none of its residents fully trusts. Each morning, Sergeant Miller leads his patrol past the laundry yard, a clipboard in one hand, a steaming mug in the other. The women greet him with mock military precision. "Guten Morgen, Ries Miller," they chorus, giggling as he blushes and tips his steel helmet as though in greeting to royalty. They expect reprimands, but he lets the joke stand. By now, it feels like routine, his role in a daily play that keeps everyone sane. Inside Barrack 7, Elsa, the dark-haired former radio clerk, writes to her fiancé listed missing at sea. Her handwriting steadies as she describes the unthinkable. American guards who smile, food without ration cards, and women dressing their hair with margarine for lack of pomade. They call themselves giants, she writes, but they are the gentlest giants in the world. At Christmas, the chaplain requests a joint service, a gesture no regulation covers. Candlelight flickers across faces still uncertain of protocol. Hymns begin. Silent Night, merging with "O Little Town of Bethlehem." Voices overlap awkwardly, foreign consonants softening under shared melody. For a minute, history forgets its hierarchy. A guard offers coffee afterward. Elsa accepts without hesitation. Both recognize the breach in etiquette and choose to pretend otherwise. The camp, however, is watched by other eyes officers wary of sentiment-blurring ranks. Early in January, an inspection team visits, clipboards clicking louder than the guards' boots. Their report notes excellent hygiene, adequate discipline. Prisoners seem content. One colonel remarks, half smiling, "You've built a country club for Nazis." Miller answers carefully, "We built something that doesn't need guard towers anymore." The colonel shakes his head, but signs the paperwork. On Sundays, a small baseball game forms between guards and prisoners. The German women, quick learners, adapt their precision to American pastime. They swing awkwardly, skirts colliding with speed, but the laughter drowns any rules. Each home run triggers applause from both sides of the wire, one of those absurd arrangements that peace invents only after war forgets itself. Then comes a smaller drama, an escaped letter. One of the women manages to send home a note uncensored, describing the guards as taller than trees, kind like brothers. The newspaper in Bremen prints a portion of it, And within a month, the War Department intercepts translations citing overfraternization. A memo circulates. Maintain proper distance. The phrase lands like frost over the camp's warmth. Conversation dims. Laughter turns cautious. But habit resists orders. A few days later, during routine maintenance, Miller's patrol passes the garden where the women have begun planting seeds saved from rations. The sight halts them, bare winter soil, half frozen, yet the women persist, pressing life into earth. Something stirs in Miller, a recognition deeper than rules. He removes his gloves, kneels, and helps cover the seeds with his own hands. No one speaks. That evening, the brass bell for supper rings softer, as if the camp itself were holding its breath. Spring reshapes everything. Green returns to the hills. The war in Europe feels suddenly far away. Rumors of release spread. The women sew farewell dresses from khaki curtains. The guards pretend not to notice. One afternoon, Elsa gifts Miller a small embroidered patch depicting a pine tree and a loaf of bread stitched in brown thread. "So you won't forget we planted something," she says. He hides it inside his wallet, where it will stay for decades. The government might record no medals for such service, yet history's ledger gains a quiet entry here. A camp without revolt or cruelty, a daily rehearsal of forgiveness disguised as chores and jokes. As summer returns, transports form to carry the women back to Europe. They line up again before the buses, lighter now, their laughter no longer defensive. The guards call out goodbyes across the yard. For both sides, the separation feels less like release and more like the end of a season neither expected to treasure. Dust rises behind the departing convoy. Miller stands, hands in pockets, watching the vehicles shrink beyond the pine trees. On the horizon, storm clouds gather but drift harmlessly north. The camp settles again into silence, holding stories too gentle for official dispatch. And in that deepening quiet, the question left behind begins to change shape from, "What were they like?" to "What did we become when we met them?" From these questions, the story turns toward its final movement, toward departure, reflection, and the faint echo that lingers when war's boundaries dissolve into shared memory. April 1946. The magnolias have bloomed early across North Georgia, their waxen petals lying like fallen stars along the camp roads. The news from Europe reads of rubble restored to governments and borders. But here, the only boundaries are fences waiting for dismantling. In the women's compound, trunks stand packed. Barrack doors are open to the wind, beds already stripped. Inside, echo replaces conversation. The guards move among them, completing last formality signatures, clearances, lists. Each word that once carried authority now sounds strangely polite. At the gate, Sergeant Miller checks his clipboard without focus. Across the yard, Elsa and the remaining 47 POWs wait beside painted buses, shining under noonlight. They wear civilian dresses sewn from old uniforms, gray recut into something almost graceful. Few smiles now. The day feels heavier than arrival. Departures often weigh more than captivity. When the clerk calls names, each woman steps forward for baggage inspection, handshake, brief farewell. The Americans have been ordered to keep speeches short, to avoid displays of sentiment. The officers expect military crispness. None gets it. Instead, the women begin pressing folded handkerchiefs, embroidered scraps, sketches into guard pockets. Small gratitude disguised as tokens. Elsa is last. She approaches with poise learned from discipline, but eyes bright with tears. From her satchel, she removes a photograph, a group around the camp garden, smiles uneven, a baseball midair between two nations. She gives it to Miller. You were right, she says carefully, choosing English words she knows. We did not need the tower. He wants to answer, but the throat tightens. He simply salutes, half regulation, half blessing, and steps back as she climbs aboard. The bus doors close with the soft click of finality. Engines shudder. Dust leaps from wheels. The convoy rolls beyond the last checkpoint, fading into pine light. Silence settles like windless air after storm. Miller stares down at the photograph in his hand, the dirt under fingernails, the crooked smile of prisoners kneeling beside guards, the sense of something ordinary achieved in extraordinary time. He keeps it, folded, for the rest of his life. Within weeks, Fort Oglethorpe empties. Flags are lowered. Barracks become warehouses. Wire rolled and stored away. The camp dog, unclaimed, follows anyone with a familiar scent until the final trucks pull out. For a while, the sound of the bell for roll call echoes each evening by habit, rung by nobody. Then even that stops. Years pass. Photographs migrate into archives, faded contact sheets labeled by captions that tell too little, German women POWs. Georgia, 1945. Somewhere under those dry words lives the echo of laughter that began with one startled remark about size and ended in mutual respect. It remains there still, faint but distinct, like the scent of pine after rain. Those who served there grow old. When interviewed decades later, one former guard speaks through wistful amusement. They were different from what we were told. Smarter, funnier, braver maybe. And we were bigger, sure, but not just taller. Maybe bigger where it mattered. He pauses, as if apologizing for sentiment, then smiles. You can't guard people that long without seeing tears the same color as your own. Another, one of the women, writes in her memoir, "They defeated us gently." It left a mark harder to heal and kinder to remember. The fields of Fort Oglethorpe stand quiet now, pressed under suburban lawns and light industry. Yet when afternoon sun burns through the pine haze, the air still vibrates with an invisible remnant. A whisper of laughter, the murmur of dialogue in two languages, the footfall of women who learned captivity could contain dignity. History seldom celebrates such moments. No flags, no monuments rise for humor amid defeat. But these are the hinges on which wars truly close. They remind us that size, strength, power words the world worships matter less than the choice to use them gently. In the distance, through the soft tremor of heat, the old parade ground glows briefly. It feels as if the land itself remembers. When strangers meet without fear, even through barbed wire, history begins to heal. And in that brief laughter over distance and difference, humanity rediscovers its own proportion.